Hello everyone and welcome back. This week we're going to be taking the block out sculpture that we completed for our ocean animal and start the sculpting process. Now the first thing that we need to do when we get into the sculpting process is prepare the sculpt. We have some prep work that we need to do in order before we can jump into the application and start working with all the digital tools. Think of this prep work kind of like masking out all the windows and doors when you're getting ready to paint a room. It's super important, and in every sense, it sets the stage for the quality of work that we're going to be able to produce in our sculptures. Let's jump in and take a look at what we got going on. So this is the conclusion of my little blockout model, and I'm pretty stoked and pretty happy with the overall look and feeling of my hammerhead shark. It's pretty great. However, if you look over here in the outliner, we have a tremendous amount of work that we still need to perform in order for us to do what's called remeshing. And this is a Blender specific item that I think you're really going to enjoy. Remeshing is really the process of taking all these parts and pieces and gluing them together. However, the first thing that we need to do is that we need to get all of these individual objects onto a singular object. If you look at my outliner way over here, check it out. I got a whole series of separate objects that make up all the parts and pieces of my little mesh, and I need to join them together. The remeshing tool is only going to evaluate a singular object inside of our scene, and this is also really important to point out because since remeshing is only going to look at one object, we can separate the sculpt into a whole series of manageable chunks and pieces if we're intelligent with how we create and how we organize our scene in the outliner. Now for me, I want this base mesh for my shark to be all one object. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over back into my outliner, and I'm just going to do a spot check here. Now there's a couple things in here that I want you to look closely at, and I apologize, I know on the screen it's really small. I'm just going to grab this first, it says Cube 001 on the outliner itself. And if you look carefully down here into the transform channels, I'm in my item properties, the orange little cube. These transform channels have some values in there. That means I created the cube, and then I moved and scaled and rotated this cube to start making what is ultimately the tail of my little shark. Well, I need to zero out all these transforms in order for me to join all these objects together. Now, you don't have to do this step, but I find it's a good practice. Whenever we're combining objects, we remove all of the history from an object so that history doesn't influence anything that comes next. So let's go ahead and do it real fast. I'm going to do what's called applying the transforms, which is going to make the computer think that the current location of my little shark fin, way back over here in the back, is its default pose. Let's do it real fast. I got this object selected. If you go into the object pull-down menu way up here at the top of the screen, where we're going is into the apply area. There's a whole bunch of different options that we have inside the computer itself. Oops, excuse me, go back in here. And what we're going to do is all transforms. You can do each individual one. If you wanted to keep the transforms for the rotation or scale or even position for that matter, you certainly could, but I want all three to be returned to 0. Now, as a reminder, it's going to take all of this transform information and use its current location as its resting pose. So watch carefully over here, and more importantly, watch carefully inside the 3D viewport. I think you're going to find that it's not going to move. Let's do it. Object, apply, all transforms. There we go. So did it move inside of our three-dimensional scene? Yay, I like that. In addition, you can see all of the transform channels down here have been returned to 0. So mission accomplished. Now I'm going to do that for all of my objects inside my scene itself. I got my box selection tool selected here. So I'm just going to drag out a selection box. I'm in object mode. And we're going to do the exact same thing, object, for all of these at the exact same time. All transforms. There we go. Let's just do a spot check real fast. I'm going to go through each object, maybe not each of them, but a good majority of the objects in my item list here, and just make sure that all the transforms have been removed, and they have been, so yay, mission accomplished. So with all of those transforms been applied to the objects themselves, we're now ready to start joining these objects together, and it's quite easy to do that. As one might imagine, we're going to basically merge all of these objects into one object inside of the outliner. First things first, let's select all of them. Okay, there we go. And if you look very carefully in the object pull-down menu, we have a couple choices in here. Now specifically, we are looking for join. And the keyboard shortcut here is Command J. There it is. I'm horrible with lists, by the way. My brain has a hard time seeing these crazy lists. And the command is join. Command J inside of our keyboard shortcuts. The moment we fire this off, you can see that my object list then gets condensed. Everything gets combined or merged, if you will, into one object. So now the computer sees this as a singular object. If I grab it, moving around in object mode. However, it does still recognize that these are discontiguous polygonal pieces all kind of mashed together. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to hit undo, just get my transforms back to the origin of the scene. If I simply jump over into edit mode real fast, check it out. I'm going to go into my face selection set and just start double clicking on stuff. There we go. So it still sees that these are all a whole series of discontiguous pieces. I can even grab that entire piece, grab it, I'm on the way, okay? Here's another great little keyboard shortcut if you still want to do some component level editing on your mesh itself after you've joined them, which you're totally allowed to do, by the way. Now, if I go in here, and if you look real carefully here, as I go in, I'm just double clicking on this gigantic cylinder that creates the central mass of my shark itself. But double clicking doesn't really select all the parts and pieces. It didn't grab that face, and it certainly didn't grab this one over here. Double clicking just selects the edge loop. Well, I want to select the entire contiguous piece, and the keyboard shortcut for that is the L key. L as in Lima. We hit the, let me get back in here. Double click on it, hit the L key, and now it selects all the connected faces on that island itself. So pretty cool. It grabs it. It's the L key. Now with all of our pieces joined onto one object, we're now ready to start the sculpting process with all of our remeshing tools.